Hi, this is Mike from Blue Road Home Music with a tutorial on how to integrate Reason 8 with Logic 10. In other words, how to get Reason to basically be used as a slave program in the Logic 10 sequencer. I write music for a show called NCIS, and I commonly have to do a lot of electronic type score, and I love Reason for that purpose. It's a great program, great sounds. However, I'm not a big fan of the sequencer in Reason 8, so I'm a much bigger fan of the Logic 10 sequencer. I just feel like I have more control, quantization, all of that. So this is my workflow to get to be able to use Reason within Logic itself. I would recommend, if you haven't done so, to upgrade to the latest versions of Logic and Reason. The programs seem to work much better together now. There's less glitches from what I've noticed. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing you have to do is make sure that Reason is running in 64-bit mode. And the reason for that is because Logic 10 only runs in 64-bit mode. So the way to check to make sure that Reason is running in 64-bit mode and not 32-bit mode is to go up to your applications, find the Reason folder. So mine is right here in the applications, and then find the actual Reason application and just select it, and then just hit Command I, and that's going to bring up this information box here. And what we're most interested in is this checkbox here where it says open in 32-bit mode. If that is checked, make sure you uncheck it. If you uncheck that, and see mine is not checked, that means we are indeed in 64-bit mode. If it's checked, that's going to open in 32-bit mode, and Reason's not going to work with Logic. So make sure that that is unchecked. Aside from that, we're ready to get started. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to open Logic. You have to open Logic first. Okay, so we're going to open a new instance in Logic. So I'm just going to go File, New. And for this, I'll just go ahead and create a software instrument for right now. Okay. Now you can open Reason. Okay. So first Logic, then Reason, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm opening Reason now. So here we go. And depending on your template, this is usually the default template that opens in Reason. But I want you to notice something up here at the top in green here. It says ReWire slave mode. That means that Reason is noticing that Logic is now the controller here, and Reason is just a slave at this point. Not to be unpolitically correct, but that's the terminology. So ReWire is indeed now slaved to the Logic sequencer, and that will happen. ReWire, just for anybody that wants to know who doesn't, is just a means of communication between the two softwares. Most digital audio workstations contain ReWire, and it's a way for like two separate programs to talk to each other. So we're using ReWire for this, and we can see it's working. So first thing we're going to want to do is in Reason, hit Tab, and that'll take us to the back panel. What you want to do is you want to go up here to Audio Input Output. It's the left button in the right hand corner. So you just select that. And you notice there's a master section here, left and right, and it's going into 1 and 2. Well, we don't need this master section anymore. So pretty much all this stuff is obsolete. We really don't need that. We're going to create new instruments, and we're gonna start routing them through these outputs. We're only going to route them from output 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, and so on. We're not going to use 1 and 2, and I'll show you why in a minute. I know it seems kind of counterintuitive. Why not start with 1 and 2? But it's much better to start with 3 and 4, and I'll show you why. So that being said, now we don't have any instruments, and so I just hit Tab again on my keyboard and back on the front side. So let's go ahead and just load an instrument. I really like the the Thor sequencer. It's a pretty cool instrument that has a lot of very cool sounds. So if you notice, I just opened that, just dragged it in, and I want you to take note of the name here, Epic Poly. That's the patch. That's the current patch. This is the default patch that it just loads with. All right, so we'll just keep it that way for now. But I want you to take note of the name, okay? Now, the first thing we have to do is we have to route this instrument within reason to the proper outputs, which then Logic will see. So here's what we're going to do. We go hit Tab. And if you notice here, this is, again, Thor. This is the backside. Here's the left and the right. I'm going to scroll up, and you can see it automatically created a patch to outputs 1 and 2. But again, we don't want to use 1 and 2. We want to start here with 3 and 4. Okay? I know that seems a little weird, but again, we'll get to it. So your output is going into channels 3 and 4. So remember two things right now. The name Epic Poly, which is your patch, within Thor. And then remember, when I hit again, which reason outputs we are now going to, because that's how we're going to align everything in Logic so we can hear it. Okay, so the setup here is pretty much done in Reason. Let's go ahead and just minimize Reason. And now we need to get Logic seeing that instrument. So the first thing we have to do is we have to actually create an external MIDI instrument. We can't use the software instrument. You need to create an external MIDI instrument because it's technically seeing an instrument that's outside of the program, not within your VST instrument. So we're going to create an external MIDI instrument. And this is the default that happens. This will be different for everybody. It's whatever your audio interface is. Mine is the 828 MK2, which I use. So you can see here, that's what's selected now. So the next step is to actually connect this MIDI channel, this external MIDI channel, with this synthesizer in Reason, okay? So to do that, it's very simple. You go up here into the upper left-hand corner of Logic, okay, and you select the Library tab, okay? And now you'll notice down here, you have a selection labeled Reason, okay? Well, that's obviously what we want. And then from here, you just have to connect this channel, right? This Reason channel to the synth. And the way it's labeled, it goes by the patch, the synth patch. So remember Epic Poly, well, there it is right here. You can see it. I know you're thinking it should say like Thor, but the way this connects is through the actual name of the patch on whatever instrument you're using. Okay, and if you change the patch, well, before I should say, you can see now it says Epic Poly up here on my main MIDI channel, right? Now, if you do change the patch, and I'll show this to you later, the name will change here, but you'll have to rename it here, just so it doesn't get too confusing. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. So, great. So we've selected Epic Poly. That's now connecting this MIDI channel, and we can get rid of the library. We don't need it. That's now connecting this MIDI channel to this software instrument, okay? But now I'm playing my keyboard, which you can't see, but you're not hearing anything. So there's one more step we have to actually do. And that is you want to open up your mixer. And then we have to create an auxiliary channel, which then routes the actual sound, okay? An auxiliary channel is just very simple to create. Create a new, you go up into here into options, in the mixer, options. So I'll do that one more time just so you can see options. There is a shortcut, but I'm just showing you the exact way. Create new auxiliary channel strip. Okay, so now that we created the auxiliary channel, one thing to take note of is that the fader automatically on the auxiliary channel, when you create it, is set to the very bottom. Just something standard in Logic when you create a fader. So you just want to put it back to 0 to 10, so you can actually hear audio come out. That's pretty obvious. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise this up a little so that you can see here we have an input selection, and on the auxiliary channel you want to go to the input selection, and then you see we have a selection for reason, and then you just want to connect this to the outputs that we selected for reason. If you remember, we went to outputs 3 and 4 in reason, so that's what you want to connect them to. Now, the reason I didn't connect them to the 1 and 2 output is because you can see here it says ReWire. The RW stands for ReWire, mix left right. In reason, mix left right, it is a master output, so it bleeds into the other channels, and what we want here is isolation. So I won't go into that, but just know that when you're doing this method, it's best to just start with your outputs 3 and 4 and then move on to 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9, 10, and so on. You have quite a few outputs to work with. So just don't worry about inputs or outputs 1 and 2 in reason. Just start with outputs 3 and 4, which is what we did. And you'll notice, again, just to refresh, we go back up here, we're in outputs 3 and 4, okay? So that will just align everything properly. So again, we want to go here, reason select channels 3 and 4. Now that aligns us properly with the outputs in reason. And now when I play my keyboard with this MIDI channel in record enable, you can hear. So there you go, now you have the audio. There's one quick thing I want to go over. You see how this is record enabled, this MIDI channel. Now if I disable that and I play my keyboard, we shouldn't hear anything, but look what happens. We still hear it. Now that can be a problem when you're adding on various instruments from reason and so on, and it's pretty obvious. So the reason for that is we have to go back into reason here, and I want to show you, it's kind of hard to see, but there's this little arrow. Now the reason that this keeps playing is because indeed this is another program that is open and it is recognizing the signal from my keyboard. So what we want to do is we just want to move this arrow here up to this transport channel, and the easiest way to do that is just to left click over here, and there you can see the arrow has now moved. So now when I play my keyboard, you still see movement on the light, but you don't hear anything in Logic. That's what we want. That'll be pretty obvious. But now when I record enable, you hear it. Good, and that's what we want. But now when I disable this, when this is not record enabled, I'm playing my keyboard right now and you can't hear it, and that's exactly the behavior that we want to keep everything consistent. Okay, so now that I have this, the last step is to really just record something, just so I can show you guys. So I have something set at 90 beats per minute. I'll set my metronome. Let's go ahead and record. Okay, and there I just recorded. Nothing impressive or anything like that, but it's just to show you guys how this all works. So now when I play this back, and there you go, and I can obviously turn off the click, but you know, and now I can utilize my quantize functions in Logic, and I can do whatever I want to this audio. And now, of course, you can add whatever effects you want in Logic. So if you go up here on the auxiliary channel to the audio effects, you can add whatever you want. And I really like this Native Instruments replica. It's kind of a cool delay that it's sort of like a spatializer delay. So you may not be able to hear that, but it adds kind of a cool dimension. But the nice thing is now you can actually go back into Reason as well, and you can play this, but then of course you can also adjust the knobs and all the effects in Reason, and you can get all the sounds that you want. So you got the best of both worlds. You got Logic effects and you got Reason effects. So that's kind of nice. And you can automate all these too, and I'll go into automation in another tutorial. So that's pretty much that's all you really need to know. There is one other thing that I did want to show you really quick. If we go back to our library up here at the top, and you notice it says Epic Poly, that's all correct. Now, what if I wanted to change that patch? So here, let's go to something rhythmic. They got some interesting things in here. I'm just going to choose this for right now. So I'm just going to drag it on there, and now you can see the patch has changed to Busted. Okay, so now when I go back into Logic, I just want you to notice one thing. So the name up here has not changed. However, if you look in our library, the Reason connection to our patch has changed to Busted. So if you find the patch that you really want to stick with, I would recommend that you rename whatever patch you're going with here and here just to keep it consistent. So I don't even know what this is going to sound like, but let's listen to it. And it's actually kind of cool. All right, so let's say I wanted to stick with that, so I would rename it Busted, and that's the patch name again. And you see how the MIDI region hasn't changed names either. Easy way to fix that is just to go up to Functions, Name Regions by Track, and then you can see here the region is also changed. You can do that on multiple tracks. And then your last step is, if you're really happy with this patch, you're not going to change it, you may want to come down here and change your auxiliary name to the patch name as well, just so you don't get confused, and then you can affect it however you want. And there is one last thing I wanted to touch on. I'm going to go ahead and save this session, save as, and I'll name it Reason Integration. Okay. One thing to note is you have to also save it. You also have to save the Reason session. They are still two separate programs. So even though I saved it here, it did not save it here. So if I just closed out of Reason without saving, I would lose the synthesizers that I chose, and that would be quite bad. So you'll probably want to save it as the name of your session in the same place. So Reason Integration. Okay, so just note that you want to save both the Reason session and the Logic session. Otherwise, when you reopen Reason, it's just gonna open up in its template, and you have to select, even though it's opening within Logic, you have to select the actual session. Okay, so that's one thing to take quick notice of. And other than that, you are good to go. So I hope this tutorial helped you if you like this kind of workflow where you really want to use Logic as your main sequencer. And it's a really good way to work with Reason in Logic. And If you did find this helpful, please like the video and please subscribe. Go ahead and leave comments, and also if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them, and I will do my very best to answer them. So for now, have fun with this, enjoy. I hope you guys can make some cool music out of this. Until next time, I'm signing off.